Hello, everybody. Sorry about the delay. Um, I've been busy with a birthday party, and let's see if I'm getting Facebook connected. It wasn't letting me connect Facebook, so sorry for not coming right out and chatting with you guys. It looks like Facebook is now part of it. Um, my grandkids, I had two grandkids who had a birthday party today, and was busy with trying to get that all set up and figured out. Um, so once again, I'm sorry for being almost 20 minutes late by the looks of it. As soon as I could, I got here to jump right on. I didn't even do anything else but come right in and kick on the keyboard and the laptop and such to get this going. Matt and everybody else, very happy you guys are here. You were here before me. Mikey, how you doing, Mikey? Thank you for joining me. Glad that it finally worked on Facebook. So yeah, it's been a very busy day and such. We'll have Dale on here in just a minute. He was gracious enough not to murder me for getting this all set up and making him wait to get on. It's not good when your guest is more ready than you are. Hopefully you're warm down there in Texas. So anytime you're ready, Dale, just give me the thumbs up. All right. So without further ado, let's bring our guest on.
Hey, hi, Scott.
Dale, here you just good. How you doing tonight?
Doing fine. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, busy.
Obviously, yeah.
And hi, guys. It looks like we're getting a nice crowd gathered up already.
Good.
First time live streaming to Twitter on our Twitter account. So, beautiful. Mikey is in Texas, where I don't know if she got all that cold front that they had there for a bit, but glad to see she's on. And, yeah, I mean we're used to it up here, but even that would have been cold to us.
Oh yeah.
So if you'll take a moment, Dale, and kind of tell the world who you are and whatnot.
The whatnot part, I don't know. I'm Dale, Dale Haight, and I don't know what you want me to share.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah. So I've my background is that I spent several years working in the court system and then as a full-time pastor, during which time I traveled all over the world. I also obtained my master's degree in biblical literature and then a doctorate in theology following that. And I basically traveled to about 33 international cities over an 11-year period of time.
Really?
Yeah, just predominantly in throughout Asia, southern Mexico and the Guatemalan border, and all over Russia and other parts of Europe, and most of my time then in the later part of those 11 years was spent in either the Philippines on the various islands there, or also in East Africa, in Kenya and Uganda, which has really stolen my heart. That's where I wouldn't mind being. Yeah.
It sounds like you've seen a lot in your time, and
you make me sound very yes. I've seen.
Sorry, my mind is still kind of trying to get focused on this. I literally, like I said, I called you when I was on the speakerphone as I was driving home, and ran in the door, got myself a drink, of course, and jumped on this.
Me too.
Here's vodka.
No, not hardly. No, it's a privilege. It's been a privilege to do all of that traveling all over the place, and a real honor, really. But part of what I think we'll be discussing tonight really has to do with not the travel to those places, but what occurred there and what continues to occur, in different parts of the world.
I was about to say, that's up to you on if you really want to go into the details like that. But I figure we would definitely touch more on anything that you might have seen there that would relate to the conversation and such.
Yeah. Well, and I also, I don't want to fail to mention one of the major highlights in the past 10 years that I've been able to have, and that Melissa and I have had, and that's walking with you and the Warren Area Society of the Paranormal, and being, part of a team and as a consultant to not only this group but to other investigators all over the place. When they run into some difficulties, spiritual difficulties that the team isn't prepared for or hasn't been trained in, or is in need of having some intervention. And that's really where we've...
now, when you mentioned Melissa, you're speaking of your wife, of course.
Yes. Yeah, she's around here somewhere. She's watching.
Yeah, she's been on almost every time, if not every time. And I know when you're not curled up with a blanket, you're joining us.
Well, we enjoy the podcast and what you're doing here with this, and really appreciate the opportunity to walk.
No, I'm definitely blessed to have you not only in our lives, but blessed to have you come on. I mean, it's definitely more benefit for us. And you got so much stuff that you could tell people, and people could hear what you have to say. And I imagine we can't even begin touching on the surface of everything.
Well, we have but I did want to mention to you that one of the things I've enjoyed working, with you, and that we have enjoyed working with you and the rest of the team there, has been just a simple attitude of just trying to help people, and as recently as a couple of weeks ago that you and I went to a home, and just opportunity to help people to relax and to be comfortable in their own homes and learn how to take ownership of their own homes when they're being perplexed by spirits, inhumane or otherwise, kinds of spirits, or inhuman, I should say, inhuman or other kinds of spirits that might be perplexing them. As
well as just even just personal feelings, even though it might not be paranormal or supernatural, just having that sense of people come in and listen to you makes a world of difference.
It does. And one of the things, as you know, and that we have really focused on, is the very first rule in any investigation, paranormal investigation or otherwise, is to rule out all of the possibilities that really would indicate otherwise or contrary to what the people might be suspecting. And I would say that probably 90% of the time when you start doing that, you start to find out that there are other reasons, whether they're emotional, spiritual, or other kinds of reasons that things are going on that are going on. And then then there are those times when that's not the case, when what we're actually dealing with is something which may be demonic, or and that's quite often where I get involved, when there's the concern that there's something happening in the spiritual realm of things that is perplexing to the people in the household or the business or whatever the case might be. And it's not just simply it changes from a ghost hunt that the investigators might be interested in into something a little deeper and more counseling oriented and this kind of thing, and also having to confront maybe some entities that can be very uncomfortable and confronting.
And you gotta be careful on such things, because you could really get into things that seem very normal and fun and thrilling, and then turn out that it's just something a little bit darker, manipulating things.
And that's where a lot of this has come in our relationship, and with some of the other groups that we've walked with. where things just seem to be pretty normal, or people don't really understand this aspect of the work, and they go into someone's house and they start to stir things up, trying to get a response for their video, for their cameras, their infrareds, and all this kind of thing, or their what do you call the boxes used, the EVP or whatever those things are,
and the spirit box.
Yeah, and that as well. And the next thing you know, you've stirred something up that you wish you hadn't been playing with. And that doesn't benefit the house that you're visiting, doesn't benefit that family or the children or any of those things. So what we've tried to do is build kind of a network that would be able to early identify those things, so that and sometimes we can tell and sometimes we can't, but if there is something that just seems unruly and something that's just out of place, that we can go in and identify that and perhaps deal with it at that moment.
Well, very true. And just because I had something on my mind and it flew right out the window.
I had the tendency to do that.
I was so enthralled in listening to what you were saying that I just kind of. So let's go to my next thought. You keep saying that you have consulted outside of the group, which we know you have, and we are very happy that you're willing to do so. Now, you're willing to do so for anybody that contacts you, right?
Yeah, at the very least, phone consults and things of this nature that we would do if there's some distance between us. If there's a way possible for us to go and help. And I do want to make sure tonight that we provide some of the background to that, so that people don't think we're just looking to do these kinds of things, or that we're trying, that we really believe that there's the demonic everywhere. So I want to build some level of foundation, if we can, this evening. You've been in my trainings. We have actually conducted a kind of an awareness seminar for this and for college students. I know at Slippery Rock University, one of the professors that was an advisor for a paranormal hunting team, a paranormal group down there, invited us to come in and do lectures there, and great opportunity to bring some of the strong theological background, because when we're dealing in the spirit realm of things, you can stir some things up, but we've got to build a foundation for that. What do we mean, the spiritual realm? Because a lot of people that are in paranormal groups aren't necessarily in tune with the spiritual aspects of what they're doing, and yet it's very spiritual what is going on when investigations are happening,
even if you intend it to be or not.
Exactly, yeah. So the first thing we recognize is that there are two sides. At a minimum, there are two sides to everything in life. There's, first of all, the human side. This is the side that we're living on, the plane that we're living on, and so forth. And then there's the spiritual side of things. And so for me, I'm a follower of God. I believe in God. I believe that Jesus is his son. And I believe that the authority that I have to deal with entities that are not positive, but are rather negative, comes directly from the authority that's been given me by the Lord through the Word of God, through the Scriptures. And so I don't make any apologies for that, but I will tell you this much, and Scott, you and I have had this conversation a number of times, that when we talk about these things, it has a tendency to stir up controversy especially in the church, because people will say, well, that's just, that's stuff you shouldn't be playing with, you shouldn't be messing with that, or it's not real. That's probably the most common objection. This isn't real. But the Bible, the New Testament in particular, and throughout all of Jesus' ministry and throughout all of Paul's ministry and Peter's ministry and James and so forth, these guys dealt with this on a daily basis. This was not something that was an unusual event in the life of the early New Testament church. They were dealing with this all the time. And so it has always perplexed me that there would be the thought that these things are not to be dealt with today, or that we're not confronting those kinds of things today. I really would invite those folks that have that kind of objection to come along with us when we're actually, and not that they would do that or be able to do it, but to actually see what happens when we're dealing with a little 3-year-old child or something like that that can't sleep in their own bedroom. And I've dealt with that a number of times because of the sounds and because of the things that they're seeing. And, and yes, psychologists can have some answers for it. That's great. I respect the sciences and I respect the psychologists. But at the same time, sometimes they don't even have the answers to these things yet. We're able to go in and pray with a family and walk through the house and deal with some things. And have some conversation, like you said, just the openness to have conversation. And the end result of that is that the house is filled with peace and good things that happen. And we are then helping people, which is what draws.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you short.
No, that's okay.
We've felt the differences in homes after we first enter, and then after we have done our investigations and so forth.
Yeah.
We felt the physical difference and the emotional difference in homes after we left. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, you're right. People won't be able to come to us on cases with young ones or people's homes and such. But we have had what we call public case investigations, let the public come in and such. And that reminds me of the one time that we thought the place was pretty safe there in the factory that was closed down. And we thought it was pretty good, and to the point where we even raffled off tickets and earned a couple $, and that was a night that whatever was there decided to go from playful fun to worse. Right. But let's take a moment and kind of recognize the chat a little bit, because we really appreciate everybody being here. We still have 7 viewers so far. It's been fluctuating. But yeah, Matt, he likes to help out in many ways with these live chats, and been up here a few times. You've listened to us go back and forth.
Yep.
So definitely thank him for being here. And Missy, I see Jacob popping in. Hey, Jake, he says hi. You can see the chat, correct?
I cannot. No, I don't see the chat. I don't know if there's some way for me to do that, or look, maybe it's the comments. Let me just click on that. There they are. There's everybody. I see it. Yep.
And that's why you see me saying hi to people and have no idea who I'm talking to.
I thought you were just having one of those moments where you were talking to yourself, but that's.
Well, it's okay to talk to yourself. It's okay to even answer yourself. It's just not okay to lose an argument with yourself.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Jacob and Mikey, if she's still here, and a few others have been chatting right along. Matt is saying that he'd like to have a conversation with you one of these days.
Absolutely, and appreciated. Matt was actually we were on his podcast last night, viewing that, and just greatly appreciate all the work going on over that direction, that part of the state. Yep.
Pumpkin whiskey is strong.
Yeah, which may have something to do with how you're behaving this evening, Scott. So.
No, I'm just starting to unwind. Rush.
There you go.
But, yeah, so back into, as we were chatting, glad you're here, Mikey. So yeah, you gotta be careful, because it seems like very easy to be lulled into a sense of security and then have things switch pretty quick.
One of the things that we covered, I believe you had an event in Youngsville here a few years back, and we covered during the seminar. Really want the groups to conduct the investigations. You understand the responsibility. You have to think about this. Somebody has contacted you because they're going through a very negative experience in their personal life, and they have entrusted you. They have actually reached out to you because they've heard that, and I'm talking to all of you that work in this field. They're reaching out to you and they're saying, help, we need help. And a direct result of that is that contact is made and whatnot. And if we're not, one of the things that groups, no matter who they are, I mean, I've seen it a lot. And I was a full-time pastor for 15 years, in a large church. And I just have to tell you that sometimes when we're called on to do things, the ego can enter in, and there can be some real, some real self-flattery that can take place. And as a result of that, we're not really actually reaching out and helping people as much as we should be, because we're not paying attention to the details of what's really going on. We're too busy patting ourselves on the back for the outreach to us, you know.
And that's why I don't let Lee jump on these chats, because his ego is just so large. I don't think it could fit the camera.
Oh, wait a minute. We know Lee quite well. I just, for some reason, that didn't line up with our knowledge of Lee.
So. Oh, come now. Don't be modest just because you're on camera.
Right. There you go. No, Lee's a great guy. I think he should be on co-hosting with you. So
you guys are going to really have to get after him about that.
We will.
I'm sure he's here. He's very supportive behind the scenes.
He is. Yeah. Lee is one of the great guys.
He's like a good sport bra, I hear.
One of the I think the reasons that we were drawn, you know, I mean, we were invited. I believe we just talked about this the other day, that Betsy invited us to come to a meeting, and when Melissa found out that Ursula was going to be there, and they were really close friends, as you know, then it was hands down, no question, we were going to come and check it out and see what was going on. And one of the things that stood out to us in that meeting that was happening was just this strong sense of wanting to help people. That was very, 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 very important. And Lee, I'm glad you're listening to us, you know, because I do. One of the things we were drawn to, really, Scott, you and Lee, kind of leading, the charge on those meetings. And I want everybody else from the other groups and other people that are tuning in tonight, this evening, to know that the professional manner in which this group set out to conduct itself does good then for the people that make contact with them. It may not be frequent contact, and in the meetings there might be a lot of play. I guess I'll put it that way. But that's what happens when good friends get together. And as a result of this professional approach to things, really caring about people, I'll be honest with you, I'm up to a point right now where I can't count the number. And these are just the things that I've been involved with directly, or that Melissa and I have been involved with directly. I've lost count about how many of those opportunities we have responded to over this time. So it hasn't been in the thousands. I don't want to miscommunicate. I just want to say that there have been so many, and so many of those folks have been helped. I'm sure that some of them weren't, and we would feel very, very badly about that. But we would hope. But
we don't dwell on it.
We don't dwell on it. And we've basically, I function more in that area of consulting, because in all honesty, I really don't know much about the whole ghost hunting thing. I mean, that's never been a part of what I've done. I just know about the spiritual side of things and the supernatural side of things, and how that can come into play when folks are doing these investigations. And so we're glad to help out. We're glad to use what background God has blessed us with to step into these roles. And the one thing that I don't have is I don't have a fear of
little one.
So.
Say hi.
Hi there.
Sorry to interrupt you.
She knows Dale.
Oh, yes. Hi there.
One of the granddaughters.
Yes.
How are you? Oh, you can't even be seen.
No, she's too short. She's being hidden by you, Grandpa.
There we go.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
That's good. What have you been doing today?
Birthday parties, huh?
Kids' birthday parties.
All right. Birthday party.
All right. Say bye.
See you later.
But
she wants to see your hat that you won.
The hat that we won. Here you are. You want to look at it? So yeah.
So Scott, I mean, Melissa's kind of, I
see that, and I'd like
her to do that. She can prod me, because I have the tendency to ramble. I know you don't, but I do. And when I start rambling toward different things, then I might forget to talk about some things that could be helpful to folks.
And I'm hoping to connect on that, but I'd like to, you want to show them? And she fits her a lot better than it did me.
Hey, look at that.
Elevated Vlogs. Can you say thank you, Elevated Vlogs? No, yes.
Thank you.
Very nice.
But so I would like to get to that, and I really appreciate her bringing that up because I'm sure the experiences are. And thank you guys. I see everybody saying that she's cute. I don't get the same comments when I'm on the screen, but
there are reasons.
It's long hair, I'm sure. But so I was kind of curious what your first thoughts of, or some thoughts were when you heard of a paranormal group in the area.
You talk about when we first heard about the Warren Area Society. Well, first of all, I come from, just by way of background, I was raised in the Lutheran Church. We didn't really talk about this kind of thing at all. And then when I went into ministry, I've been predominantly into interdenominational and charismatic ministry. For anybody out there that knows what those things are, when I went to college, it was the Bible training, very strong, that kind of thing. And then when I went to grad school, then it was refining all of that and really digging deep into those things. So when we first started to hear about this group, I can't say that I went in, dragging my feet. It's just that I was completely unaware that this kind of thing was happening, and it connected with me because of my previous experiences. Because, so many of the experiences I had, especially in southern Mexico, that we can talk a little bit about, that introduced me to the side of things that I get involved with. A lot of that experience that I had, I was starting to, as we converse, and you'll remember some of the early conversations we had, is what do you do if you're on one of these investigations? And the next thing you know, you're presented with, I guess, what the common term would be like a poltergeist, or something where there was something really manifesting in the presence of the group.
We throw Betsy in front of us.
Well, sometimes, offering up a sacrifice, I guess. So basically, no, I mean, that aside, I've had those experiences, and not with this group, but with other groups where I get a phone call. This is going on. This is happening right now. It actually happened with this group as well, with our group. This is going on. We need you to come over right away. And we get
very early in our start. We had to get a hold of you pretty quick.
And we start seeing some, the care that we provide is more like a trauma kind of thing, a trauma care, an emergency care. And we get there and we find a full-blown manifestation going on in a home and in an individual. And I don't want to, get into details about who or where, because those are confidential issues. But I think the what does need to be talked about. People need to know that this stuff can really happen and is very real. And I am not going to shy away from that, regardless of what religious communities around me might feel about it. My challenge to virtually every Christian denomination is, folks, you preach it, you teach it, you read it, you speak it out loud when you're having your church gatherings, and you talk about it, but you don't do it. And so one of the things that has really stood out to me is the fact that there's such a huge need in our society, and it doesn't get met. It doesn't get met because of fear. People are afraid. So you have to, and I'm not alone. There are a lot of us across the country and across the world that just simply have the God has just called us to it. I don't know what else to say to it. I mean, it's the Warrens, for an example. I mean, a lot of folks would wonder about. Ed and Lorraine, and this is the background. Ed felt a calling into ministry, but took a different direction and functioned primarily as a demonologist. What was his role as a demonologist? If you haven't read the books about his work and their work together, then you might not know what I'm talking about. But if you do read it, the one book is called The Demonologist. It is the book about Ed Warren and about what happened to him, and what has transpired in some of their investigations. Yeah.
Now, a lot of people throw that term out pretty loosely, and I'm scared almost for the people that try to put themselves out as such and not truly have the capacity to to deal with that.
Yeah, to deal with it once it manifests. So, and this leads, Matt's question is a really great question here. He said, you believe that your religious background helps comfort a client more than just saying you're there as an investigator. And I will say, absolutely. And what I would encourage is that in that relationship, there is a great level of comfort to the subject, to the client, as we call them, when they know that there is a part of that investigation team that specializes in this. Now, I can't be there for everything everywhere, but perhaps there is a local pastor or something, and I don't pastor churches anymore. That's not what I do. It's not my calling. But when you might have someone or a lead on someone that is competent and qualified. There are two of us, both of us with the same first name, in our area, in our county, actually,
Warren County.
In Warren County, that actually function in this area. And we've worked together in tandem. We've worked as a team together in some situations of deliverance. And all I can say is that, yes, to answer the question, there is comfort. I don't go in and I am not a paranormal investigator. Okay, so I'm going to say hats off to you guys. You don't have to take your hat off, Scott. Hats off to you guys that this is your calling. This is your level of concern. My role as functioning as a demonologist and a deliverance minister, that's really what I do. And because it's what I do, and it's because of what I have, special training in and a special anointing from God in, I think that's what makes it effective. Now, you don't have to agree with my theological positions, but I'm going to tell you right now, as soon as you're confronted by a demonic entity or an inhuman spirit out in the field, you'll understand what I'm talking about, and you'll actually change your thinking on it as a result of that.
Very true. And just because you're paranormal investigators doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to run into anything ever.
You may not, and God bless you. That's the case, that's very good. But I will tell you, when you start to work with more than in setting up cameras in old buildings and investigating or reinvestigating a lot of the places that have been visited by a lot of teams over the years, no problem with that. That's fun stuff. It really is. But Melissa and I had discovered early on in our relationship with the Warren area group that we found out very quickly that as soon as we come on the scene, their cameras don't get anything anymore. And so we stay away from the investigations that are set up that way.
That gives me 40 hours of watching a video, nothing but me dancing and
a little dust, little dust orbs here and there. So,
right. But we always enjoy every time you guys are there, no matter what.
Yeah.
You guys, the great thing about the group is there's so many different dynamics that it just, it does well. But I feel spiritually and religiously, if you follow such things, that we are put into type of cases we need to be put into. Obviously, if we were just having fun in graveyards all the time, I don't think you'd be part of us as much, and I don't think our paths would be as well. And I feel that we all got connected to kind of truly help, as opposed to just weekend funds.
Well, and I want to say that there's value in both. So I don't want to ever dismiss, because honestly, we've been to some of those. Okay, so we've been to Guernsey a couple times with the group. We have been, and we actually had manifestations of things there that were not demonic, just simply the things that appeared. We've had activity that has literally, and I'm telling you right now, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I could not believe what occurred there at all, because I've never been exposed to any of that. So that's an exception to the rule I just mentioned, that we don't go on things because nothing shows up. Well, things showed up a couple of different times. One in the broad daylight, one at nighttime when we were parked right on the roadway there. And so I'm just saying that those experiences are valuable. They're invaluable, actually. There's no way to measure the camaraderie that occurs when a group gets together and goes and investigates an old abandoned warehouse or an old school or an old youth center, or especially I think, Matt, you're over in the Danville area, right? Isn't that over near Wellsboro and that, beyond Wellsboro, Mansfield? all that area. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, central Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and I think there's a youth. There at least used to be when I worked in the probation parole field. There used to be a juvenile psychiatric facility that was over there that would be used by the court system at times. I mean, who could ever resist the opportunity if those places closed to go in and investigate them? Old malls, things of this stuff. So, okay, I'm glad I'm in the ballpark. Anyways, thanks, Matt.
Throwing bricks all day.
Yeah. So what I really wanted to say was those things are invaluable experiences. They draw the groups close together, gets everybody together so that they can build relationship, because that's really what you want to do if you're going to help people. You want to have those interrelational things. And the other thing,
it keeps us safer and more trusting of each other when we know what we're doing, how we react. We get to pick up the physical cues of each other, like, okay, Dale is not seeing himself. We need to make sure that he's okay. You know, and you could tell, even though me and Lee, we joke, but you could tell when, okay, we're just not being our kidding selves. And
well, the one thing
that helps build up into the cases in the cemeteries and in the pay for places and such. It helps us kind of cue in with each other.
It builds the team. That's really it, and we have these great conversations while we're there and so forth. You promised you wouldn't put up the picture of me looking like I was scolding Melissa there, which I was not doing. Well, anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. But
there's no video proof otherwise.
That's right. Nothing. Well, I won't say there's no video proof. But in any event, we have she's sitting across from me now. So if you see me looking up, because I'm looking at her once in a while.
That's fine. I'm looking off the other side from you. If you were switched around, it would work. But my chat is off to my right. My camera's to my left, and it's we're not studio professionals.
Off to the right as well. So let me also mention to you that all of those events which build camaraderie, those are team building exercises. That allows you to be able to communicate. And when we were involved with you guys were doing an investigation at the request of a director at a local youth center, and we went there and we spent the night in a basement.
Sorry,
I watched you guys. No, it's okay. I watched you guys actually functioning as a team, setting up and doing everything, precisely. I was also stopped in and visited while you were doing an investigation at another location, another public location, in which there were things that happened, and which is fantastic. But when you see those things happen, those little things that occur, and again, I'm not going to step into your realm of things, but I've got to say, what we see quite often is the evidence that there is something in the supernatural realm. That if we believe, first of all, you can't believe in God. Maybe you don't believe in God. If you don't believe in God, that's between you and him. He believes in you. So
and that's a good thing. He believes in us.
Absolutely. So, but if you believe in God, then you have to believe that there's a spiritual side to things. So I think that's
very,
important.
Very much. I mean, I believe you said it correctly earlier that you get, if you're on a case and you don't believe in it, and how were you saying that? You will find out very quickly about the spiritual side of things once you're into a true investigation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't want to miss, if there are any questions of anybody that's viewing, to make sure that you either restate them if I missed them altogether, or more than happy to take a break in the action to address.
As well as if you have a question, any kind of, well, I won't say any kind of question, but something that's relative to us or the topic at hand, ask. That's be it Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. All three are streaming. And if you find any value to what we've speaking about so far, or you've been on for a while, just click the little like button or heart button or whatever, depending on what platform you are. It definitely helps us stay out there. And And the more we reach, the more chances we are to come across other teams and such that might be able to network with us. And
Okay, so Matt's question, it's a very important question, and I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to read it out loud. He says, just for people that may
hold on, Matt, or hold on, Dale.
Yeah. Oh, you brought it up. Very good. Thank you. Wow, you're pretty good at this.
I'm learning.
Just for people that may not know, what classifies a spirit as demonic? Well, first of all, everything is about origin. Everything is where it all begins, what it stops. So I think what your question might be is, how do we see something happening or some involvement and be able to identify it as an inhuman spirit versus what you guys might call Caspers, something, just a friendly thing going on. And basically what we do is what I attempt to do, what we try to find out is what is going on, is the spirit manifesting in specific ways. So if you have a situation like we did run into in one of the early on investigations where pictures of people, crosses of Jesus are literally, I know a lot of people don't believe this happens, but it does, turned upside down, knocked off from walls, things of this nature. When you start to see those things that disrespect God, that's the very first thing that I would use in identifying some type of an unholy spirit. So you see a mockery of God or God's people. So if you have a pastor, priest, or whatever the case might be that's involved in it, and there's a lot of mockery going on, this kind of thing, then those are ways of identifying. Because of where I walk, a lot of times I will actually see a manifestation on someone. Early on in my ministry, before I even knew about this stuff and had gone, my first experience with this type of ministry was in Mexico, in central Mexico, in the city of Saltillo, Mexico. And that experience that I'll allude to here in a moment taught me about how to observe things. But even before I had that experience, it was an interesting thing that when I saw that people were being infected or inflicted by a demonic spirit, I would notice, even in casual conversation or looking across a crowd that I was speaking to, I would notice a difference. And you might find this weird, but that's your problem, because I don't. It's part of me. I would find that the skin color would take on a grayish tone, and it would draw me. Then the Spirit of God would draw me to pay attention to that individual at that moment in time and see just what was going on. And every once in a while, that would bring itself to a point where I was able to actually speak to the person. Now, I want to say this is very important. I think that it's extremely important to differentiate between the human that we're dealing with and the spirit that is manifesting. We never want to address the person. We want to address the spirit. We want to comfort the person. So that sometimes the manifestations are pretty loud and pretty crazy and even injurious. And if that takes place, we have to meet the physical need of the individual. We have to take care, make sure they are healthy, make sure that there's something good going on there. We don't want to pretend about this stuff, okay? If you really don't think that the spiritual side of things has both a positive and negative consequence, you really probably shouldn't be doing this thing at all, okay? And I'm trying to be kind, but the reality is you're dealing with people's lives. And it's very important to them, even if it's something that has a psychological foundation, even if it's something that there's an explanation for. And as I said, 90% of the time there is. You have to treat people, okay? So
Right.
Then when you're dealing with a demonic entity, you have to deal with a demonic entity. You can't deal with the person, you deal with the spirit behind it. So I'm a person who believes that the spiritual realm is so real that the things in the physical realm don't happen until they've happened there. The spiritual realm is that real to me. I honestly believe that that's a vital part of what we run into. So I want to get back here. Is it Mikey? I want to get back to that.
Yeah, but let me address this one real.
Okay.
No, not that one. I'm sorry, Missy. This one. Do you know why?
This is a commercial, folks. This is a commercial here.
For the Tidioute Tavern crowd, I guess. Why would a grown man make beer out of a kid's breakfast cereal?
My question exactly. By the way, I just had this conversation with Scott yesterday. So
mixing spirits.
I don't know. Is it magically delicious? I want to know.
It is. It's very tasty. For those of you that don't know what that's about, I'll explain with hopefully under 20 seconds. This is a home brew. It's an Irish stout where in the fermenting process, I put some Lucky Charm cereal in a cheesecloth and put it into
that's our Scott.
Add flavor. That's our Scott. And in such and I use lactose sugar to give it kind of that creamy, milky flavor. So the taste is almost like a bowl of milk after you ate all the cereal, and it's magically, wonderfully delicious.
I just want to say we want to thank our sponsor, Beer by Scott.
Beer by Scott.
Here. I'm not sure what the name of his brewery is, but you know,
depends on how about Wasp Distillery.
Oh my goodness, no! Please don't.
I'm willing to try to make us money any way we can for those big vans with all the fancy equipment in it, and you know, all that.
Well, Mikey seems to be multitasking, I guess. Can you bring up that question? It was 8:30.
I was about to do that.
Okay, good. All right. So
is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, that's the one. So the question is a very, very good question. Has there ever been a time that you couldn't help with a spirit? Not sure if you've already mentioned it. That's fine. I had not talked about that yet. And
I don't think I have in any others. Okay,
so there are two schools of thought on this. I've dealt with both things. The one thing is that for somebody to get free of something, they have to have a well, nice. Okay.
That's why I chuckled. I couldn't help myself.
Okay, so that's good. And then very important, don't let me forget to address Ann's message down there. Hi, Ann.
I'll do that.
See you, so to speak. I can't see you, but you can see me. But we'll make sure that we address that next. So yes, I have, to answer the question, Mikey, yes, I have had that kind of situation happens. Remember, there are two schools of thought. One is that the person who is inflicted has a responsibility. And the other is that once you've dealt with something, then it goes away permanently. So I want to tell you that I think that the former rather than the latter is true. First of all, I can bind up whatever the spirit or the entity is that's perplexing. I can do that under, and so can anybody that follows Christ, under the authority of Christ. It's in Ephesians chapter 6. It's over and over again. We have, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and rulers of darkness in these high places. And so it's very important. We have the authority to exercise over those situations as they come up. Now, from that point forward, there's a responsibility on the person who has been delivered, in my opinion. Then it's up to them to get themselves away from whatever the situations may have been that introduced them into that. So for an example, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but I have to address it. One of the portals that has been used over and over and over again over the years may seem like a harmless little nothing. And I don't mean to offend anybody that disagrees with me. Let's just put it this way. We will have disagreements. I'm not gonna back away from where I feel on this, and you can make up your own mind. I have never had a problem with anybody making up their own mind about something. After all, it is yours to make up. So I want to say, I have experienced a number of times where people played with things, and I'm not talking about, things that are hard to see. They've played with things. Okay, so Ouija board is one of the things that I think has introduced a portal, an opening into playing around with something that could lead, doesn't always, but could lead to demonic or inhuman activity. And virtually every person I know that is an expert in this field, the people that I have studied, the people that I have watched, all say the same kinds of things. And then on top of that, the scriptures teach it. And they say, stay away from these things. These things are going to bring you harm. And if they bring you harm, if they open up a gate where these entities can come and begin to perplex somebody, well, then obviously the first thing I want to do after I get them free at the moment, okay, very, very important, free at the moment, then I need to give them some tools to live with so that they're no longer opening themselves up to that. And quite frankly, it's like anything else. When you do something habitually, then you start thinking that it's okay to do. And then I just want to warn you that from what we can see in biblical evidence and in real-time evidence is that that when people play that kind of game, then the problem won't just simply come back, it will come back worse than it was to begin with. And so I want to caution folks that when you're dealing in this realm of things, this is a serious matter. We can have lots of fun doing the things that we're doing, but if we
and we do.
Yeah, if we put the clients first, if we put them first, and they're manifesting these things we're dealing with. So I've got to tell you, Matt, that the reality is, or I'm sorry, Mikey, that the reality is that in those cases where things lingered on, those necessary changes may not have occurred. Now, I can't necessarily prove that because I may not have contact with that person afterwards, but I do try to do follow-up with individuals that I've worked with. So that's right. Important.
Right. I do want to take a moment to say hello, Heather. She popped in and said hi to us.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, hi, Heather. Yep.
And that's definitely was a great question, Mikey. And yeah, well, there's times where also that people get a hold of us or other groups and invite us in for the excitement of this. And once things we try to take steps to remove out of their homes and such, they still want that energy and they want that activity, and they almost feel lost once it's not there, that they almost invite stuff back in.
Yeah.
And so that's another aspect of that.
Well, this is great. And the questions that are being asked are really, really important questions. And if you don't mind, Scott, what I'm going to do is try to tie in some of the answers to the questions as you bring them up to some of the experiences that I had in other parts of the world. So we can be
and I'm just lucky enough to be here and interact with you face to face.
Well, that's how I feel about you, Scott. You're a handsome figure of a man. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so I want to address the one question here. Can we address Matt's question first and then Ann's after that with respect to finding a demon's name? Okay, so Matt asked the question, how important is it?
And we'll get to yours in 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, how important is finding a demon's name and how important? Well, here's what we know. Here's the evidence, okay? So I'm going to say that I think that it's pretty important, all right? Is it absolutely necessary? Not necessarily to bind up the situation that's going on, but to actually have it be rid of it. It may be extremely important for us to do that. The evidence we have of it is how Jesus operated in the ministry. So when Jesus confronted demonic entities, the biggest one that stands out to me is where he confronts a legion that names it, that gives up its name when Jesus asks the name. So what is your name? And he says, and the demons speak, we are legion, for we are many. The word legion means many. And then that the way that Jesus dealt with it was very important, because once the name was identified, all Jesus had to do at that point in time was say, go, and they went. So that's how important it is, Matt. That's how important it is that once you have exposed it. Now, I want to mention something to you. And again, I mean nothing controversial when I say these things, but there are so many movies and shows and things like this out there, and some of them find themselves really out in left field, but some of them come they're quite accurate with how things really manifest, how they happen, and what you will find though that those that really occur, those that really happen, will quite often follow the same pattern. identify the inhuman spirit's name. It gives you a leg up on them. They don't want that kind of exposure, has been my experience. And when you do that, you just simply are able to dispel that, and it can be gone, gone, gone. If you're not getting to the point where they give up the name, we've seen it in, let's just take for an example, the movie The Right. Okay, with who's the actor there? Anthony Hopkins.
Singers, I'm good at. Actors, not so much.
Well, it's an extremely telling movie based on a true story, based on actual events that occurred, and the priest that is the primary subject, with a young priest that is studying this type of ministry, exorcism, and the rite of exorcism at the Vatican, is a real man who has a real ministry in the state of Washington and is extremely well thought of, and he's one of about 125 Catholic exorcists that are here in the country right now. What I wanted to point out about the movie was the fact that some of the things, while they may have been elaborated on because of the fact that it's a movie and they have to sell tickets and get the movie out there.
Very true.
A lot of the items that occurred in there were actual films that were done. So if you see the classroom scene, the films that are being shown up on the screen are actual films that were shot during deliverance ministry. And I think that's extremely important to note. Those were not contrived for the movie. They were actually from the archives. So the reason I point that out is because some of the manifestations are extremely bold. They're extremely big. And I don't want you to be afraid of that. I just think it's really, really imperative. And by the way, Melissa brings up a really good point. She says, I think it weakens the spirit once it says its name, and then you can proclaim it to leave. You can demand that it leaves because it can't hide anymore. They hide behind their name. That's an excellent point, honey. That's people need to understand when they're dealing with this to identify it. But I want to say this. I believe, now this is the Roman Catholic version of exorcism. They believe strongly, and for a good cause, that these things should only be exorcised by certified exorcists. Now, what made them certified exorcists? Well, first of all, they were appointed by their bishops to be in that role, but they've also taken specialized training to know how to do these things. I've had that.
So $25 in an online degree is not it?
It's not. And by the way, you can Google this all day long. Okay, the real world is out there. And so I just want to say to you that when we're actually talking about maybe the more serious side of what can happen when these investigations are going on, thank God they don't always happen like this. So all you kids out there that just enjoy going on the fun things and setting up the cameras, doing the investigations, you're doing an important thing. And I'm so glad that this doesn't happen very often. When it does, it's usually in the confines of a family, a child, somebody that's been through something. We experienced a manifestation of an individual that had it's just the triad, the three sets of scratches on the back and so forth that manifested right in front of team members. These aren't games. You know, this gets pretty serious.
Now, speaking of kids, let's bring this one back up and let you have a conversation with that.
So, Ann, your question, my son sees spirits. Does that open him up to demons? So the real question is, what does your son see? Okay, what are we talking about? And that might be,
she and I spoke once or twice about this a few times. And he sees generally, okay, now I have to think about my conversations. The few things that's been brought up is seeing like
Scott, Ann, are you still on? Can you just respond if you're still on the programming? I want to make sure that we have your permission to share this information on this feed, because I think that's important, Scott.
I agree, and I generally do try to keep. But I think what I was going to say was a pretty basic description.
Okay.
Seeing like speaking of seeing an older gentleman while he's out at a park, if I remember correctly. So it's not so much at home every time, which I believe she had mentioned before. But even while he's out and about in public and such, he's able to see things. And
So,
it seems kind of to me, with no professional backing behind me whatsoever, other than a few years of playing in cemeteries, it seems more like he's able to see maybe possibly spirit guides or such.
okay. I would say this. It really depends on the circumstances. What you also could see happening, sees elderly people, but he also has connection with, John. And of course, I minister to John and actually know him very, very well. So I think that there are some of these things, it would require further investigation and conversation to really make a decision about it. I want to say, Mom, it's okay to just simply pray for your son, encourage him, and so that he's covered by that, and by you and by your faith. How old is your son right now?
I believe his birthday was yesterday, and he turned. I'm sorry, Ann, if you don't want to say in this, but I believe he just turned 19.
Okay, so he's older. So basically,
this is something that's been happening through a good portion of his life, and I hope you don't mind me speaking out, Ann.
So I would say, and I hope the rest of the group doesn't mind me saying this, is that I wouldn't be objectionable at all to having a conversation with him as a young man, just to see where, what has occurred. And because I've got a connection to the family already there, I would certainly want to do that. Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's wonderful. So he's turned 19, and the mom is saying, we pray twice a day. Good. Excellent. So if you want to put him in touch with me, we'll give you some information here later on, or you can get a hold of Scott and he can touch.
If you have send me like your email, I can put that on screen.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll give you that email right away. In fact, I don't know. Can you text him my Yahoo email? Can you text Scott my Yahoo email? Because that he can publish that. That'd be fine.
And you're not only for Ann here, that's anybody who's listening or watching, since we're not on a radio, could contact you this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ann says, no, I don't, but I don't know what she's saying. No, I don't. Which question was
probably
that?
Saying that she doesn't mind us so much.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Appreciate it, Ann. So I would love to have a conversation with him. I'd be able to tell a lot more about what's happening. It's very, very possible if he's a young man and walking in a level of faith of some kind, that God is simply giving him a gift to be able to identify things, and that there's no harm in what's going on. I would like to think of that as being probably what's going on, but without a direct conversation with him, which I certainly am open to doing, I don't want to give a pat answer to it. It's really hard to give those answers. So, but Scott has now got my email address. Anybody on the program this evening on the podcast?
Is there a period? Is that a period there?
Yeah.
Dale?
It's dale.haight@yahoo.com.
All right. I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Just want to make sure that wasn't a typo.
So can we just take a real quick break here to just to give a couple of examples that I've walked through. It might be helpful to some folks, and we'll get back to some questions. This is a very active group. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I think it means a lot. So one of my first...
Look at this and let me know if this is correct, Dale.
That's correct, Scott.
Maybe.
Yes.
Did it pop up? Okay. I wish it could be on your side, but that works.
No, that's okay. They can email you at my email address. That's great. So this all started, and let me just be specific. This all started in my life with my very first trip to Mexico. And on that particular trip, I was teaching leadership conferences to pastors. And I was there with another group of people that had organized the trip and invited me to come along. And so we were really having a lot of heavy sessions. I won't go into the details of that. But during one of the sessions, one of the interpreters that was working with me ran a business. He was from America and he lived in this city. and he was running a business that was an English as a second language school, an ESL school, and it was just set up so that businessmen could come and learn how to speak English so they could do business back and forth between Mexico and the United States more capably. He came to us with a request to come to the house because the business itself was really incurring very difficult times and potentially closing, in spite of the fact that they had a large number of students, and it just wasn't happening. And he was feeling an ominous presence in the house itself and didn't understand what that was all about. So with some very experienced spiritual warfare ministers and myself, without any experience in this realm of things at that stage, went to the house at his invitation, and we did a walkthrough of this house. Now, it was a house that was converted into classrooms. So these all the rooms in there were various classrooms, and the office for this business. And we went into this place, and you could immediately feel that there was something very, very wrong on the property. We didn't understand the depth of it. It was just really, really a hard place. And so we started to go through the rooms, and one of the elder ministers that I was with started to get a word from God, a knowledge that was downloading into him, into his mind and his spirit, that there was something very horrific that occurred on the property. Could we check into that? And so we took the fellow who owned the business and the property there and asked him to do that. And he came back completely white as a ghost, so no pun intended. And he came back and he said, I had no idea when I bought this place what had occurred here, but it was the scene of a murder that had occurred a number of years before that. And that's why the property was vacant for a long period of time. Nobody would buy it because in Mexico, where there's a strong and large Catholic population, there's an awareness of spiritual things more. It's also got a large population of people who practice voodoo and hoodoo and all the other do's out there. They are extremely involved with black or dark witchcraft, not to be confused with Wicca or some of the others that are light witchcraft or kitchen witchery or anything like that. And if you don't know these terms, start looking them up and studying them, because...
And thank you for clarifying that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are just kind of giving you the evil eye and saying...
Yeah. I just want to make sure that I'm really clear that what we were dealing with there was something of very, very black, very, very dark magic, very, very evil. This is the kind of thing where these folks will put curses on other people so that they will fail or so that they will die. And they are effective at doing that. And we get into these subcultures and we go, it's just because they're a subculture, they're third world or something like that. No. The city I was in was a very modern city. It was not a third world city like I saw in the southern part of Mexico all the time, where we saw more of that practice going on and the manifestations of it. But in this particular location, this apparently was the scene of a murder. There was an undealt with entity that had occupied that house that was being identified by my peers, and I was just simply observing the ministry that was going on. And the end result of this was that there was a cleansing that we did, spiritual cleansing of that house, driving that demonic entity that was taking on the form of oppression in that house, so that no matter what was going on, it was going to fail because it had claimed ownership. Now, can I take a break here and say this, and we'll get back to this story real quickly. One of the things that I have been led to do every time we go into a place where there are manifestations that are negative manifestations, and Scott, you just witnessed it here the other day, is that I will have the occupants of that home that have called on us for the work, I will have them go and get me their signed lease or their deed or the bank paperwork if the bank still owns the house. And I will have them bring that into the common room, the living room, we would call it. And and we pray over that, and then I have the occupants of the home, the ones that are owning it or are going to own it, I have them make some very strong declarations about their ownership of that place. Why? Because when we're dealing with the demonic, we are dealing with ownership, control and power and ownership. What they are really trying to do is trying to drive out the goodness out of people, and they are trying to occupy that property. And as a result of that occupation, then their evil can continue to persist. So that's what we did in this place in Mexico. And the city was Saltillo. And it's just a little bit south of Monterrey, a little bit north of Mexico City. And from there, then we went down south, where we encountered a lot more vehement kind of manifestations that dealt with voodoo and curses being placed in dark witchcraft and this kind of thing, which was very commonly practiced there. These are not ignorant people. I just want to make sure you understand that we're not talking about people here that don't know the difference between right and wrong, faith and no faith, and all of that. There's a willful participation in the things which directly oppose God, and they do it with that intention in order to shake people up and in order to exercise power and control. You have to think about a demon the same as you would think about a narcissist, okay? Because the manifestations are so much the same. The issue is about power and control. It's all about them. It's not about you. It's about them. And what they will try to do is get you feeling really, just think about this for a minute. How many times have I'm telling you, countless times that I have counseled with people that have been perplexed by an inhuman spirit, and they're basically convinced that they themselves are worthless people that have no value, that have no ability to do anything or succeed in life or do anything like that. Okay. So
it's very easy to fall into that trap as humans.
It is, and as a direct result of that whole thing that goes on, they start to take the blame for things that the demonic realm is responsible for. So I just want to encourage you. I just want to encourage everybody that's listening to this podcast that there is something very good that can come out of every one of these situations, but there is something very, very dark about some things, and you need to be aware of it.
And I really appreciate everybody being here, and I feel that you're here for this particular podcast, as Dale likes to call it, to hear what he's saying, because I'm pretty sure it's going to touch you in one way or another, as far as spiritually or your day-to-day life.
Scott, for me, I just simply grew over time. I just grew weary of seeing people fail and falter because they were under these stressful attacks one way or another. And then I had my own experience with this as well, where I dealt very early on in my life. I was in my 30s and dealt with a real powerful thing that was, that caused uncontrollable anger in me, and God delivered me from that in a very, very robust way, and dealt with that. And now I'm just nothing but a pussycat, and it's just God.
Only if situations you need to be.
Yeah.
I've seen you take control of the situation when we're in where you had to come out and help us, and that would not be a description I would describe at that point in time.
No, and I've had experiences even recently. Well, I won't say recently. A couple of years back, with a group that had contacted me in the midst of a real barnstorm of an event going on, in which we actually identified several portals, we would call it, inside of the home where demonic activity had been invited, and as a result of that, there not only was there no peace in the home. When I arrived there, the lady of the house ran screaming from the house saying, "Get that thing out of here. I'm never coming back." And when we went in there were a lot of things, a lot of manifestations that we may not have time to get into the details of tonight, but at some point we can.
She was not a willing participant on that.
Nobody
the one that ran out, but the past situation started with simple stuff, but
Yeah.
my understanding, but it grew. And this is not a case for, as Dale mentioned, this was not a WASP case, but
No.
I was privy to listening to one of your conversations with us that they started off pretty light and in symbology and such, and then it just kind of grew to the point where the woman was running out of the house. And
Yeah, and I should point out that neither of the people who owned the house and lived in the house were actually engaged in any of those activities. It was a guest in the house that was and introduced all of this stuff. So enough. I don't want to really go into more details there.
No.
Again, I function at a level, because as a counselor, as a pastor, whatever the case might be, I try to function at the highest levels of confidentiality, always asking for permission for people to talk about things. And I don't have that in that case to talk about the details. Some of the group
I think there was enough details of what you said. People understand what you're saying without.
So Matt brings up a question, if you'd like to bring it up, 903 Mark. He brings up a question. What are the levels of demons, I presume is what's being asked there, and what are the most common that you've dealt with? And don't apologize about the questions. This activity is fantastic. So
I mean, that's one of the great things about this type of live broadcast is the interaction, because this conversation that me and Dale are having with you guys probably would have been totally different subject. That's why I was saying that they're finding value, we're finding value in this, and this is what we needed to hear tonight.
I also want to say, Scott, I don't want to, this may be an area of expertise that I have and that I walk in, and Melissa and I walk in these things, but I have to be honest with you. It's not that we know everything. Okay. We don't. We're always learning. Even as recently as this week, we've spent hours, studying, listening to someone else talking about this type of activity, and really trying to get a handle on it. So that's a great segue into this question. Very, very important. So from my perspective, from the perspective of someone who's involved with this work, we see that there are very distinct levels of demonic activity. And I don't want to throw any confusion. I just want to address this. First of all, I personally believe that that Lucifer, who was an angel, and in fact an archangel in heaven along with Michael and Gabriel and others perhaps, was, because of pride and the desire to be worshipped in place of God, was cast out of heaven. And a third part of the angels that followed after Lucifer also were in. And what we now have then is we have the devil, Satan, Beelzebub, whatever name. There are about 30 names in the common Bible, the 66 books of the Bible, and there are more for Roman Catholics. But these names are all used. And then, by the way, I don't see the Bible as an end all. There are a lot of alongside books that were not selected as canon to the Bible that should be paid attention to as well. Very strongly, Melissa's a strong supporter of the book of Enoch 1, and there are so many insights that we can get from that. I won't speak to it because I haven't studied it like she has, but it's a fascinating study. But I want to say that what we see then is we see different strengths and power of demonic entities. It's almost like a military operation where you have the general, you have not the insurance guy, but you have the general that would be Satan himself, and I'll use that as his proper name, although it's a derivative. But you have other named demons that basically I would call lieutenants. Okay, so these guys are in charge of other groups of things. Now I want to say this. It's important for me to know that these were angelic beings, because that means they were created. So as created beings, as we deal with, we just understand that these created beings were supernatural in their creation. My perspective on it is that through what was done for us on the cross, for all who would believe, we've been given authority over those entities. Absolute authority. You don't have to be a pastor or priest to have authority over those things. And it gives you the opportunity then to at least keep them from their continuing functioning. And that's one of the things that we encourage everybody to do, provided that you are walking in that vein. Now, I want to say that if you aren't walking in that vein, turn it over to somebody that is. And there's a reason, because in the book of Acts, and I believe it's chapter 9, there's an example of some folks, actually Jewish exorcists, they're called, that were going about, casting out demons and whatnot.
In the name of who?
Yeah, exactly. They weren't, but these guys were. One of those Jewish exorcists, his name was Skiva, and he had sons, and these sons were going about, trying to cast out demons in the name of Jesus. Well, I don't know what level of authority these demons had, but they were pretty strong. And basically they said, listen, Jesus we know, and Paul we've heard of. Who the heck are you?
Right.
Well, they put it like that. That's my new updated version. And then these 7 sons of Sceva were attacked by these demons, and basically it says they were attacked by these men. And my read on that is basically these men were empowered with this supernatural strength, and nearly beat them to death and sent them down the road naked and bleeding.
We never deal with that.
Yeah, well, the thing is that I have confronted some pretty wild demoniac or inhumane spirits inhuman spirits in the lives of people. I've seen manifestations personally where people were manifesting in ways like it appeared like seizures. They were not grand mal seizures or anything like that, but they manifested that way. I mentioned the other pastor who's worked in this field alongside of me. He was with me. In fact, he was really taking kind of a lead role in this one session with a client. And quite frankly, this client was a professional person, a professional licensed person who had this demonic experience and was possessed. Now, I want to say that, and I don't know that I've addressed adequately the levels of demons in spiritual warfare, and we're talking about spiritual warfare, but
the conversation in itself.
Yeah, I just want to say that what happens with these demonic entities is that they're no respecters of persons. It doesn't matter. This person had a master's degree. They were a professional person. They were in a professional area and they needed help, or they were going to lose their job and their license and everything else, but they were incorrectly diagnosed with multiple personality disorders. Now, when I say incorrectly, most of the time that's a correct diagnosis. Most of the time that is treated the right way. But in this particular case, no amount of talk therapy or medical therapy was actually having any effect. Now, if you have a demonic activity going on, you have demons going on, they're going to overcome any attempt to thwart them with medicine. I'm just going to tell you that right now. The manifestation is going to happen regardless of it. It might be lethargic initially, but they're going to break through that. And in this case, that's exactly what happened.
Well, you just happen to be there at the time or around when they contacted you?
Actually, what happened was the person's therapist contacted me. I contacted the other pastor and said, "Would you help me with this?" I happened to be working in a counseling center at that time, briefly and part-time, and this other therapist came to me who was this person's therapist. So again, a lot of cloak of confidentiality going on there. You see me dancing around about some of this stuff, but as a direct result of the ministry that we were able to do with this individual at a neutral site, without going to their home and without having them in the counseling office, we were actually able to go to a neutral site, and we were able to minister to that situation, which manifested pretty loudly and pretty strongly and pretty violently for about a half an hour of that kind of activity. The kind of thing where I'm just going to tell you right now, if you're confronting this stuff and you don't know what the heck you're doing, then shut it down and get out of there and get it turned over, because this was one of those times where I thought this was going to be totally negative, that this was going to turn out really bad. It didn't. It actually was fantastic, the results. This person is completely recovered, resumed their professional capacity, and has since retired from that profession that they were in, and it was well thought of in their field. So that was a very, very, very positive outcome. And I think that's...
Let's hope my audio gets clearer, maybe because I'm not speaking clear enough. But I feel that we'd be remiss if we didn't clarify a little more strongly that most psychological, yeah,
Problems or
most,
diagnoses.
they're primarily correct in a majority of cases. Being
Yes, yeah. So
spiritual,
I'm not. Yeah, I'm
right.
not one of the people that I'm not a medical doctor. Okay, my doctorate's in theology. I just want to say to you that I want to make sure I'm very, very clear that in many cases, if not most cases, what is manifesting is a result of a biochemical disorder. If that's the case, then it needs to be treated. However, there are some who theorize that underneath all of those disorders, just like a physical or medical disorder, that there may be something in there that can be healed by God that he alone can heal, and that's fine, you know. And I have that kind of faith in God that He can do whatever He wants to do. He's God. But I want to say it's very, very important. Yes, and that's a really important point, Melissa, that you make, and that is in this particular case, we did not identify the demon by name. We never could get this person to actually articulate a name through their voice, and there was not any kind of the right kind of manifestation, RITE kind of manifestation was going on, except in the physical attributes of the person. And there was a lot of swearing and a lot of cursing and a lot of things like that going on that was completely out of character for this little person who was a every Sunday go to church person, by the way. So all I want to say is that there are what we would call best methods, and there are better methods, there are good methods, and sometimes they're just, let's take a stab at this and try to get it taken care of. And you just have to, if you can identify that, sometimes that's helpful. I want to mention something here about the levels, though, because it's so important, I think, for us to understand that when you have this kind of an army that's engaged, and there are demon spirits that are being sent out to harass and harangue people, and even worse, you have to remember that from everything we can gather about Lucifer, there isn't anything really positive about it toward people. In other words, the devil doesn't like people. He hates people. He wants to destroy their lives, and he wants to destroy the people around them. That's how you can tell. Is what the result, if the results are negative, then you have to attribute them somewhere, and that's a good place to do it. But he doesn't do a lot of the dirty work himself. He sends out contingencies, and there are realms in the spiritual realm that are governed in certain ways. For an example, most of us believe that are in this field, most of us believe that there are demons that are assigned to specific locations, localities, regions, that kind of thing, and that they might have been brought on through the kind of things that went on in that area. For an example, in the area that I live in, that we live in, there's a strong tie to oil wealth, timber wealth, and a lot of greed. There are communities local, and some of you probably investigated some of them, like Pithole, where they were boom towns. One day there was nobody living there. Oil was discovered in the area, and through Drake and all of that in the Titusville area. And the next thing you know, you have a community of between 6,000 and 8,000 people popped up within just a few months of time, and lasted for about 3 years.
Where me and Lee almost got devoured by coyotes and wolves.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have been hungry for a long time. Anyway,
and they wouldn't have had to run very far to catch me.
So I just wanted to point out the fact that the stronghold then that you might see over a region or an area could be directly related to the kind of greed, there was prostitution, there was greed, there was wealth. Nothing wrong with greed and wealth, there's something wrong with greed. There's nothing wrong with wealth. There are positive attributes to all of those kinds of things. But those were the things that controlled the society to the point where the people who had ruled over the people who did not have in very negative ways, and kept them down, kept them failing. So
my audio is working a lot better since Lee made his comment there.
It's because he made his comment. I think when we talk over each other, that's when the audio goes bad.
I apologize. I do that to you.
Well, I do that to you too, but so we mutually do it. That's it happens. But
We share the workload.
okay, so
Now, I'm definitely curious, and not to derail your thoughts and take you in any directions, but have you ever worked with somebody that's part of the Wiccan and such? Have you worked side by side in your dealings with anybody?
I can't say that I have. If I have, I may not have known specifically, but I will say that I have. We've kind of we've done our homework a little bit, not exhaustively, but one of the things that we did early on, Melissa and I, was we took a trip to New England, and one of the places we went was Salem, and we went to the Witch Museum in Salem. And one of the things that we learned while we were there was the focus on pantheology and the Wiccan religion. And I have to confess that it was the first that I really had learned of there being a difference between light and dark. I just thought it was a fascinating place. Now the various what do you call those things? That they have mannequins. They were a little hokey. There were a lot of things that were just set up for the tourists. But if you went into the actual museum and you really actually studied the thing and listened to the talk and learned about what took place there and elsewhere locally, and the witch trials and all of that stuff, you will find, first of all, that it was religious people that had initiated all of that stuff against these folks. Secondly, they didn't care too much about evidence. All they wanted to do was hang people and burn people. And so anybody that disagreed with them, what a great way to get rid of your enemies, or the people that you perceive disagree with you, is wipe them out. And so the trials were fixed. They were not just controversial, they were abhorrent. And they did not respect anything that people were thinking. So if you, for an example, used herbal remedies in order to take care, which I think most of us would say that's a wonderful thing. If you went herbal vitamins and things like that, naturopathic medicine, that kind of stuff, that is now seen as pretty normal. Well, a lot of it originated right from there. So just because somebody likes trees and bushes and plants and eats seeds does not make them an evil component. So when I talk about witchcraft, I'm not talking about, quite often, I like to make it really, really clear that there are those people who practice a dark side of those things which are intended to create problems for others and destroy other people's lives. And then there are those people that are just simply pantheologists. In other words, they're more into worshiping nature, for an example, or having a deep appreciation for nature, that kind of thing. They don't even deny God. They just simply have their way of worship, and so that's between them and God. That's the way I feel about a lot of things. We're all accountable before God for our own lives and our own decisions. So. Yeah, it's a fascinating place. Yeah, fascinating place.
Yeah, that'd be all right. But come to find out that I thought I had family that were persecuted as witches, and it comes to find out, and I want to put forth from my family and such that I'm ancestry with the judge who did those trials and such.
Interesting. Yeah, they would. As I said before, the governor of Massachusetts that made the appointment of those that conducted these trials was himself a very, very cruel kind of thing. So, and really not caring about people or the community, and it caused such a controversy in New England that it nearly destroyed that whole area. So this is nothing. The history is deep, and it's important, and it's sad. It's extremely sad. So let me go on here.
We'll get into the chats over here in a second. I believe that's where you're getting ready. You had to.
Well, I was going to go over here. Yeah, Matt at 9:20 mark.
Right. But in our little neck of the woods, with Alex going on those ghost walks tours, there was a lot of dark history and such in our area.
Absolutely.
It's some of the stuff that I learned by setting that up or help setting that up. And you know, hopefully sooner or later we could resume that because, and I encourage everybody who can in the area to attend that because so much of the local history was surprising to me. But
I know that Ursula really enjoyed the ghost walks and the stuff that Alex was teaching and leading in. Really tremendous stuff. Yeah,
he was a valuable asset to so many parts of our lives.
yeah.
Like a lot of people believe she was part of the tour and such, and she never planned to be part of it. She just came out. We happened to go by her home, and she came out like she was the local guide and just started explaining the area and such, like it was well planned.
Wow.
And asked us inside, we really like that lady that came out and helped you guys, and we're like, yeah, we do too, but she wasn't scheduled to be there. We just happened to be crossing by.
Yeah.
She jumped in with no hesitation. But before we jump to Matt's question, I see Missy said something here.
Yep. Do you think, I'm sorry, I missed that, baby. Do you think that there are things tied?
Don't worry, you'll deal with that later.
Well, okay, you can read the question there, and I absolutely do. I think talk about something that's really close to my heart. I've spent a lot of time walking with First Nations people over the years. I really have. This is no game to me. I actually went to Alaska twice and worked near the Arctic Circle with First Nations people, Eskimos there. I had a lot of dear friends in the Salamanca area. Actually did some spiritual warfare things on their behalf and with them alongside of them at Kinzu and at the new cemetery where the bodies were allegedly moved up on the hill from Kinzu, from the village of Kinzu. I remember as a kid going up and seeing all of that destruction happen there as the dam was being built. And I am a strong proponent of the restoration of rights and whatnot. I think that First Nations people have been perhaps among the most abused people in our society and our culture in America, with our white privilege. And I'm bold enough. I'll just say that I just really think that the injustice is done when Anglo people came and stole property by hook or by crook from the people who were originally there. There is a consequence to that. And I think that, Johnny Cash would have said their blood cries out, from the ground. And I think that that's a lot of what we deal with, in some of our area. But having walked with some of these First Nations folks very closely, I just want to say that, that a lot of their concerns, and these were people of faith, these were Christians that I walked with and worked with in the area there, that they just really was about not so much reparation. You can't go back and correct everything that's there. It was just simply about acknowledging that we're all just people, and really learning how to relate. I just really think that's a very important thing. Are there curses on the land as a result of some of that treatment? I don't know that there are, but I have seen that in other parts, of the country where I've been with First Nations, and and I think that there's a large possibility that could actually happen here, and and that's an unfortunate part of our history. It's there. We just deal with it and we move on, but I move on arm in arm with people that were originally here. I think that's very important. I wasn't here then, and my people, the generations before me were not here. They came over on boats, and so that, I think that was important. So, so I know that didn't really answer the question fully. I think that there are curses in the land as a result of previous behaviors in a lot of different realms. But I do think that this is always one worth looking at. And on one trip, just to mention to you, this group of people from Salamanca that we became very good friends with, and I'd go there and preach in their living room about every other Sunday evening. And we went up to we went to Kinzoon. We went up to one of our best trips was over to the headwaters of the Allegheny River over on the other side of Coudersport. And it was very interesting to me being over there that it was just a small stream, just a little teeny stream coming out of the mountains there that then develops into the Allegheny River. And it was there that I felt we prayed over that area. So we were praying for a revival to hit the area and whatnot. And I took a little Bible that I had. It was just a small, and I just got it. And I mean no disrespect to anybody about this, but I felt led that I was to, as I was praying, dig a hole in the mud under that water and bury that Bible in there so that, the word of the Lord could symbolically go forth from the rivers of the mighty Allegheny River. So anyway, that's a side story. It has nothing to do with our topic tonight. But I think there's something to be examined there for sure. So
yeah.
Matt's question at 9:20, I think we were on. Yeah. And I want to read this carefully. This is something I feel should be known, but how do you know you've interacted or encountered a demon, and what are the safest steps prior to getting help? So I think the first thing, we talked about this before, the awareness that you're going to see some manifestations of some sort, usually physically, verbally, emotionally, that are going to be demonstrative, for a lack of a better term, where you will see people actually rebelling, or you might see a physical manifestation like we did when the scratches appeared on the woman's back. You can see outbursts of anger for unreasonable reasons. In other words, it just doesn't seem like this. We're getting a manifestation of something that is beyond what's being called for here right now, and it's those are the more outward kinds of things. You may see violence. So what are the safe steps? Well, the safe steps are that if you don't have somebody along that can deal with those things immediately, then the safest thing may very well be to find a peaceable way to retreat from the situation and then try to, re-enter that situation with some help. That's possible. And I know the results of that are, well, then, is we didn't really help the person. Well, it's a process of things. Not everything happens and can be dealt with instantaneously. We live in an instantaneous society. We want everything to be microwavable. We want it all to be over with in 2 minutes and 22 seconds. And that's the kind of thinking we have. It doesn't always work that way. And
an 80s sitcom.
What's that?
It's not an 80s sitcom.
Yeah, it isn't. We're not doing a little half hour and it's all taken care of, or an hour of Law and Order and everything's all solved by the end of it. Guess we're dating ourselves now. But I do, in all seriousness, I just think that there are some pretty major things that occur. We don't know what to do. And my answer to that is, if you don't know what to do when you're in the circumstance, then that's a good indication to retreat from it and get reinforcement, so to speak. Now, if it's a matter of safety, then certainly, you want to be concerned about that and make sure we're acting expeditiously, that we don't just put it off. This is one area. Procrastination is one of my sins. I put things off. This is an area that you can't put off. You don't want to allow it to grow to something even further, something even more difficult.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
I turned down my mic and such, so hopefully that helps my audio a little bit. And sorry to hear about your grandmother there, Heather. I'm great grandmother or such. And New Orleans, I wish I'd been there. Never been there before. I've heard that.
It's a different. I've never been to New Orleans. I would like to go. I mean, I think Melissa and I have talked about, that'd be quite the place to go and really have an experience. But one of the things we know about that area and the culture in that part of Louisiana is is that there is a strong hoodoo is what's really a popular thing. There are a lot of things that come from other parts of the islands that came in, and then the French background and so forth. So a lot of things I don't know anything about, and so I don't want to speak to them. But I will say that my encounter with demonic activities in southern Mexico and the things that I saw in East Africa were things that other pastors were already dealing with quite adequately, and we were able to see a lot of those things. But in southern Mexico, some of the manifestations of people, I mean, there were if I look back on it now, I see that some of those physical manifestations were very, very vivid. They were very strong. People, almost like in a contortionist kind of way, as we prayed for deliverance over some of those folks. And the question might be, why do we see it in third world, but not so much in the first world or the second world? Why do we
think we're so distracted by our devices and day-to-day life that we miss a lot of that?
I don't know if we're really missing things that are actually happening, or if because there is such a lack, and again, this is going to be a personal opinion, but I think because we lack such we lack in spiritual sensitivity in our culture. Okay, we just simply do. We are, and I love our nation, and I love our country. I love our freedoms. I love the things that we have. I think that it's important to keep those things, but at the same time, I've been in these other nations where these people are extremely happy, but they're dealing with some of these really difficult things. Okay, so what makes them so doggone happy and full of joy when the reality is they're dealing with a lot of very negative things that we don't see? What I find in Africa, for example, in Kenya, in the deep parts of Uganda, in the jungles where I've been, in those villages out there, they have such a joy. I mean, in Uganda, where I was a place called Kabermayeto, Uganda, and a lot of the people there were affected by the dark witchcraft of Joseph Kony and his grandmother. There are still over 60 international warrants out for Joseph Kony's arrest, and he was the guy that was and continues at times to capture young people, kids, as they're traveling back and forth trying to go to school or whatever, and putting them into his army and raping the girls. And if you resist him, then he would cause deformation. He would chop off ears, chop off hands. And I met some of those people that were had escaped his control, but they came out without both of their ears, or they came out with their nose removed from their face, and things like that. Just totally abhorrent things that were all under the control of this dark witchcraft and Satanism that was. And by the way, those are two different things, but both were going on with Joseph Kony and his grandmother, who was a practicing dark witch. So there were a lot of things going on there. But in my experiences with those people, it just brought out huge levels of compassion for the people who had suffered that, but many of them had a good handle on it. In our society, we are very, I'll just put it out there for the whole world to see. I believe that the westernization of a Near East faith called Christianity, the westernization of it has turned it into an organization full of greed, an organization of control. And I'm not talking about every church. I'm not talking about every pastor. I'm talking about as a culture. And we have become such a privileged group of people, everybody in our country, that we have expectations that just don't line up with what really helps people the most. And I'm always reminded that Jesus said that what he expects to find on the earth when he returns is feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, and visiting the imprisoned. That those are the three things that he would be campaigning on if he were running for something in our culture and time. In America, we have really become desensitized to spiritual things. And that's why I love these groups. I love what happens here because there's a sensitivity to spiritual things, or the potential of them, not just the dark things that we're talking about here. These are these are rough things that we deal with. That's why God has called certain ones of us to be able to step up to the plate and deal with them. But there is spiritual sensitivity that has been lacking, and there are a handful of folks. And guess what? If you're a ghost hunter, then you get called names, right? You understand that, right? People look at you and go, "Yeah, they're crazy," and that kind of thing.
I've heard
Well,
several times.
yeah, of course, but it's because we have a desensitized society, and so we're not sensitive to those things that really are present and really could help people. In the meantime, that attitude completely ignores people that need to be helped, that need to be strengthened. And I see, we've consumed a lot of time this evening. I hope that some of it's been helpful to people. I really do. I'm not looking to close it out. I'm just telling you, we're going on nearly 2 hours, and I'm thinking,
feels like about 20 minutes, doesn't it?
It's gone by really fast.
If you're still here with us, click a like and say, "Hey, I'm here," so we know that they're not lying to us about the numbers I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're propped up on fake numbers here.
No.
I do notice that something's going on with, I'm assuming, my connection, because I do notice some kind of. So the granddaughter was very, very gracious to take off her tablet from the internet and jump on my phone internet. That's where you see me muted and kind of looking over my shoulder here, So, but
I appreciate. I just want to say that, Scott. I just want to say that I really appreciate the interaction and the people that have come. But Melissa mentioned something here at 9:35 that I think is a part of what we want to teach and share with people, and that is that when you're dealing with, no, not that one, but yeah, sorry, you were in Maui. You just had Hawaii on your mind there for a minute.
Which I don't think anybody would be any issues with. Right now.
But one of the things that she points out is something that I have a tendency to emphasize as well, and you know this because you were with me just recently with a family, and I want to say that we want to make sure that we've ruled out a lot of things, and sometimes people out of emotion, out of a biochemical problem, or out of a chemical problem, and people that are into drug use and alcoholism and things of this nature. By the way, I want to say this: I never put myself into a deliverance kind of ministry situation, even for a group or anything else, where anybody there, not just the team, but anybody, the principals, have been consuming alcohol or using drugs. And the reason for that is because what we want to have is a genuine situation. We don't want to have something that's been chemically induced. So when I deal with that kind of thing, we want to deal with as clear heads as possible. It's not always possible, but we want to do that with as much clarity as what we can. But the point of getting professional consultation from people, I've had to tell people a number of times when they lean into me that my area of expertise is in theology, it's in divinity. That's what I do, and these are the things that I do. I did spend some time working in counseling and so forth, particularly in drug and alcohol and in domestic violence. But in those particular areas, that doesn't mean I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, I am not a medical doctor. And we need to avail ourselves of the input as much as we can find out there to make sure that we're not dealing with one of those things, one of those other problems that can be ruled out before we just immediately go to the idea that it's demonic, inhuman, whatever the case might be. I do want to encourage people to read, as I said, if you are up to it, read the book, The Demonologist, or listen to it. Obviously some of these there are resources out there that can help educate us a little bit more and can make us more aware of things. I don't pretend to have a corner market on the truth, and I don't pretend to have a corner market on the solutions to all of these problems. I will just tell you that greater is the one that lives in me than the one that lives in the world. And so I don't have the fear that a lot of people encounter when they run into this. But I will, to be honest with you, and tell you that sometimes these things are scary. And
Oh, I could imagine.
enough to make me take a couple of steps back before I can get my head on straight and go, okay, wait a minute, greater is the one in me, and then really help people. But, again, just like the things that the investigations or paranormal investigations reveal, is that most of the time you're not dealing with something that is really going on, but you're dealing with something that is emotionally charged, suspicious, maybe, that kind of thing. And that's okay. I mean,
and another thing we like to say within our group is it might not be real to us, but it's definitely real to the people you're trying to help and try to figure things out for them. Even though it might be a broken pipe or, knocking pipes and things like that, that fear is real. It's as if there's a ghost there. So,
well, I know that one of the things we've done as a group, and by the way, it's a very diverse group. I mean, it's not everybody's walking in the same place in the area of faith or religion or whatever you want to say there, but we have made it very much apart when we had a lot of investigations going on, to be sure that we were praying together before we went into them, so that we could see what was going on and have protection if there was anything that was negative happening. And then, as I said, Melissa and I learned early on that our best move in most cases was to just stay away, so that everybody could have their experience and perhaps see the things they needed or wanted to see. Let's see.
Now, you have wrote a book, haven't you, Dale?
Yeah.
Not about this kind of subject.
Well, the subjects that are involved in my book, Radical Vessels, was really about the church's response to these kinds of things, and its failure to respond to this and many other things in the 21st century. The subtitle was A Cry to the 21st Century Church. And but one of the things that I hope to be back to doing here in the not too distant future is getting back to writing and doing some follow-ups on the various things that we can do to overcome this and help people be restored people, and help them to come to a real practical and working faith, rather than something that's just ambiguous and is a religious activity that we participate in every Sunday morning. The book, this is called The Demonologist, and I believe there are some subtitles answering Mikey's question. There are, within the subtitle, it actually mentions Ed Warren. So the book that I'm referring to is that one. I don't know if I can click on this to see, but
I'm not sure if the links are gonna come up.
Yeah, here you go. Thank you, sweetie. Thank you for bringing it. This is the book that I'm referring to. Let me get it up in front of you.
Not so easy, is it?
There you go. The Extraordinary Career of Ed and Lorraine Warren. This book, some of these activities are where the Conjuring films originated. I know that Ed and Lorraine were a bit controversial, aren't we all? And so I just want to say that I'm not afraid of controversy. Obviously, I'm not afraid of stepping right into it. They definitely were not. And on the back is a picture of Ed and Lorraine Warren, the originals, not the actors, that portrayed them in The Conjuring. But I've got to tell you that, there's a lot of criticism of them over investigations not really being accurate and this kind of thing. I'm just going to say this one more time. Whether they were, whether they weren't, that's between, that's just a God thing. He can deal with all that, sort it all out. I just happen to think that they were called to go and help people. They had experiences. They operated under authority. Okay. They functioned under the authority of the Roman Catholic Church in most cases. Because Ed was he actually thought he was to be a priest. That's what he thought his original calling was, and then things changed for him. So I have a high respect of people who have really lived this thing and walked it out. I have a high respect for the group, for Warren Area Society of the Paranormal, because they are good. Everybody that we know in the group, good people, salt of the earth, care about other people, and have a lot of fun together, and there's some joking around and that kind of stuff. But I got to tell you, you can count on these folks. And Scott, and I just want to say that I've told you before, I'll say it over again. Melissa and I have said it many, many times. We have a high degree of respect for you and for your leadership in all of this, and just the fact that people will contact you when they have needs. Same way with Lee. I mean, and Angel and some of the other ones. I'm looking forward. I think you have Angel on next week. Is that correct?
We do. Long enough, nothing's changed. Yes, she's scheduled.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to
7:30 again.
Give us some additional perspective on things. I'm telling you that Jay and her, great people. We just it's good to be friends. It's good to hang out with each other. We do it occasionally. COVID has kind of interrupted a lot of things, but we have occasionally had those times of just socializing a bit together, and it's always a good thing. Don't let the work that you do in paranormal investigations or in my work dealing with the demonic, don't let it become so powerful over you that you don't live life, because the end result of their work, the end result, I hope, of my work and Melissa's work is that you get to live life, that you get to have a sense of freedom and a sense of goodness that you wouldn't otherwise have if you were walking under all that oppression and everything. So,
yeah, I couldn't have said it any better than you, Dale. And really appreciate your kind words. And I definitely. Lee's always on me.
Lee caught you about this late. You told me 7:32, but it's Lee's the timekeeper.
But that's show business, right?
There you go. And the show must go on.
But he's on me all the time, and as he should be. He doesn't understand how I could be late on almost everything, but yet be a bus driver and be on schedule.
Well, I guess if you got paid for your off time, you'd be okay, right?
But I'm sure I can pretty much speak for everybody that within our circle of friends and such, that we all feel the same of you guys as well. And it's not even, yes, we're a group, but we don't even feel like that anymore. It's definitely a family atmosphere, and that's what I love about our little picnics and getting chased around the back from Lee.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, definitely wonderful times. And yes, guys, if you are thinking about having a group, or if you have a group, commune with each other outside of just don't always make it business. And picnics with each other and the families and things like that goes a long way of making the group last.
Absolutely. Can I just mention one more thing, just as a kind of a way of encouraging everybody? But
no, you can't mention it. I mute it. Go ahead, Dan.
If you are involved in a paranormal investigative group, a team, if you're involved with that, then you are involved with the spiritual, whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. You are. And you have, so the things we've talked about tonight, some of them are heavy, and I have lots more that we could talk about for the next 2 hours if you want to, but because there are a lot more stories. I mean, there are some crazy things that have happened, that I wouldn't, that I could share with you maybe at another time. But we always seem to run out of time after getting through some of the basics, and I hope that we'll be able to actually maybe record a program that is specifically the training part of this, like we attempted to do the seminars before. Obvious from tonight that there are just so many questions that people have, so many things that people want to discuss, and I love the interaction that we have on a podcast. But I want to say, if you're engaged in any of this at all, maybe you're not, maybe you're just curious, But if you're involved with it, then you're involved with something that is supernatural, and that is just the way that it is. And maybe you say, well, I've never seen a ghost. That's me. I've never seen a ghost. I don't even understand some of this stuff. I do know this. I do know that that what we deal with is very real to the people that we work with out there. And like Scott said earlier, we need to be sensitive to that, aware of that, and minister to that need, because that's really what we're being called to when we're doing this.
Very true. And and there's nothing wrong with having an informal group either. Just hitting the Guernsey Hollows and things with your friends on the weekend and such. We're not. I wasn't going to call them out on that. I miss you.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, you guys, you caught me on it. You're absolutely right. We most definitely did. I guess I believe that completely. Broad daylight.
Daylight.
In broad daylight. I don't know. I have no answers.
No, I mean, we can't say 100% that they were ghosts, and I will put that up.
Pretty close to like 99.9%.
Right.
Thank you. She keeps me honest.
That's what we all need, right?
Absolutely. She does, yeah.
So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with just no, and that's still dealing with the spiritual realm, even doing things on the weekend and such. But just be aware when you take it to the next level, when you're starting to go into people's homes and such, and
Mikey wants to talk about that, Scott. We're going to talk about it or what?
We might let it sit for another hour, and then. But so yeah, when you start going into people's homes and such, you take it a little bit more serious. Have a game plan on what you're gonna do and such. Now that I lost train of thought. So can you tell? Guernsey Hollow. I don't know how many people of you are aware of that cemetery. It's on the outside of Frewsburg, New York. It took us a while to find it, if you remember correctly. It's in a little patch of woods. It's actually on Guernsey Hollow Road, I believe. And this would have been our first time there, middle of July. It was a Sunday, around anywhere from 11 to 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And we were going there, 2 separate cars, to kind of get a feel for the place and make sure there wasn't no freshly dug graves we could fall into or whatnot. And and so as we pulled up, we looked up the hill to the cemetery, and there was a woman and a man there, I'd say middle-aged, and looked like a nice Sunday sundress and a nice suit for the gentleman. And they were walking off towards the side of the cemetery, which was about a 5-foot wrought iron fence with little pokey tops, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, I didn't realize there was a fence there until after the incident. As the couple walked up through the cemetery, the thing that stood out, as I recall, the thing that stood out was the fact that there was no car down on the road, and that these folks just kind of appeared. I don't know what their ages were. I just saw that there was this couple walking up through the cemetery where we were. This, by the way, was the same incident that I allegedly scolded my wife, probably, but actually no. But anyway, in all seriousnness, this couple that walked up through there all of a sudden weren't there around us.
Right. They walked off to the side of the cemetery, and everybody was saying, we need to be respectful, don't take pictures and such. Try not to get them into the photos, and let's look at the place over. And when we got up there through pretty much the only entrance and exit, they were just gone.
Yeah,
they could have jumped the fence.
Pictures would have been good.
But that's how solid and real they seemed to be, that we were willing to take it as they were there. And not to show any disrespect to anybody that might be visiting family or
No,
whatnot.
of course, yeah, yeah. So that experience, there was no interaction with these folks. There was nothing like that. The interesting thing about it was a pretty large contingency that we had with us. It was not just 2 or 3 of us, and yet this didn't put them off at all. And that's what what Melissa is saying. There was no opening in the fence. That's what got me, was the fact that we said, where did those folks go? Because they never walked back down the hill. So when their cars parked up the road a little bit further, and we walked up to the corner of the cemetery, and there was no gate. There was no place for anybody to walk through. It was a solid fence running up through there, which I understand now is gone.
It is
present condition, but there was that was a well-known fence up through there, and there was no gate. There was no gate until you went up, clear up to the upper right-hand corner.
And they could have jumped the fence within the 3 minutes it took for us to get up the hill, but not very likely. And as Lee pointed out to some of the, to those that could read it, both sides of the cemetery was surrounded by woods. I mean, just not ideal locations for fence jumpers, and
especially in a long flowing dress. Yes,
that was. Well, I can't tell you how easy it is to jump fences and dresses, but
I'm sure you could tell me. But anyway, that was an obvious thing. But thank you, Melissa, for putting me back in my place.
And the story we got to tell.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and the crazy thing about it was 2 separate vehicles both had the same experience too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite interesting, and one of the times that I wish we would have broke our own rules to try and be respectful. And no, Mikey, I'm not telling you about my dresses.
Well, another experience we had at Guernsey, and I know that's a real hotbed. There's like activity or whatever, but the one thing was really an odd time, was the evening that we were all parked. We were all in our cars and parked kind of in a line up the road, and we began to see some things happening. And then virtually, as I recall, all of the vehicles that were in that line encountered an electrical issue, a problem in the electronics of the cars for a little bit. And so I remember that. I think that Melissa and I were in the same car with Ursula that night. But you could see there was just something really weird going on with the electromagnetic field, throughout all that area. I don't know much about that kind of stuff. You guys know a lot more about it, but I didn't see anything manifested that I can recall, but I do remember a pretty crazy evening that night in the dark. Yeah.
Then we're not the only ones. There's been, as Ann just commented, been, she had experience there. And it's just I don't know what makes that place so active, but it's something.
One of the things you learn in an investigative team like this, one of the things you learn though is that, I've had this experience a couple of times now, where just the fear that comes on folks when they're really not seeing anything like we've been talking about tonight, the demonic manifestation, just seeing anything, so you get that glimpse and you go, oh my goodness, I'm out of here. And I've talked to people that we did an investigation for a family one time. You guys actually set up cameras and all this stuff, and we stayed out in the vehicle, stayed out in the car. And their statement, with the one person's statement with all the things that were going on, was that as soon as something happens, I'm out of here. I can't deal with this. They're gone. And that was the subject, their house that we were at. But yeah, so I mean, it's even just the lightly, I mean, we're not even talking about demonic entities here. We're just talking about anything showing up.
And we have control over that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're given dominion over that. And let's tie that back to some of what you were saying earlier. And, obviously I don't have the educational background that you have and such when it comes with knowledge. But back to Guernsey, I remember night there, one of the nights we were all there, maybe even the same night you were just speaking of. We were, maybe it was our first night there. Me and Ursula was on the path there, and she got so in depth and everything. She wasn't aware of everything around her. That's how deep and
Very focused.
Right, thank you. And so I heard, just the feeling that something was charging through the woods towards us, and it scared me. I was like, something's coming and something's coming quick, and I didn't feel like it was an animal. And I don't even know if Earth caught it because she was so focused. And the first thing that came to my mind was say, do not come any closer in God's name, amen. And just stop. Everything just settled. So, and I don't believe it was demonic. I don't believe that in any sense. But, it to me, it shows that you don't have to have theologies and all this stuff going on. You have the ability to just, if you do it in good, with the true heart, it works.
Yeah, and by no means, we don't want to paint a picture to anybody that you need theological degrees in order to exercise authority. It's good. I'm glad to be part of things with you guys. It doesn't take away your ability to deal with things as they come. I like Mikey's statement here a little bit ago. It can be very scary, but they try to stay and figure out what on earth you were seeing, because if you can do that, if you can just figure it out, maybe you won't be able to, but I think that you hold your ground. And I think and in my field, when I'm dealing with demonic entities, that is one of the things that I feel equipped to do, is to be able to hold the ground. And that's why I have people get out the deeds and the leases and whatever it is they have about ownership, in order to interrupt that flow, that threat of trying to take that ownership away from you. I think it's a great thing. Yeah, hold our ground on it. For sure.
And Heather was with us on several things too. That I see she made a comment there, and she could contest. She could voice and say some of the things that we've been through, and
I just think one of the things that you want to. There are a couple things I would, for my last little bit on this thing. One of the things that, if you know when you need to vacate, when you need to stop or cease and desist, it's not about giving up. It's not about giving up control. It's about knowing what to do, because one of the things that will happen quite often during an investigation or even during a ministry time is confusion will come. When confusion starts to get into the group, when it starts to get into the investigators, and then that confusion results in, how can I put this? A deterioration of the order of things, okay, so that things can be handled appropriately. When that starts to deteriorate, then that's time to break it up, okay? It's time to go back, take a deep breath, get a glass of water, and come back another time, because we're not doing anybody any good. And
you had mentioned to me once, and that helped me in the case with the factory there. As soon as things started heading south, what you mentioned helped me identify what was going on. Maybe you could say it again about separation, fear, and whatnot.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you can always tell when the enemy is up to something, because there'll be confusion that enters, there will be divisiveness that enters. All of a sudden, group members that got along just wonderfully last week don't get along at all tonight. And there are all kinds of things that are going on that are negatives, and when that's happening, it's time. And I always say this: whoever the leader of the group is the leader, not in name only, but is actually the leader. I know with the Warren Area Society that I know that Scott is the leader. I might have the doctorate, but if Scott says, no, we're not going to do this at this time, I go, yes, sir. It's my responsibility. There is an authority. And here's the thing: we know something about the devil. The devil understands authority and accountability. The devil understands who's in charge. The devil understands that God is in charge. Look, if he's got the ability to have order in order to carry out his function, then we also have to have that same response. So I never have a qualm whatsoever. You know this. We've had all these meetings over the years, he's always trying to abdicate the throne. And we're always saying, no, Scott, this is, the vision for this thing was put into your heart and into your mind. But more importantly, you display but you can turn off your sound if you need to, Scott. But the reality is you are, God has put you in charge of the whole thing. Now you get input from everybody. You always do. That's good leadership. You get input from everybody. So because opinions matter, they do.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes we don't have an opinion. Sometimes we do. But if we do, and you take that on, but then you make the decision. You make the decision. And when you do that, what that shows our enemy and what that shows any entity out there is that there is order. The last thing that the enemy can deal with is anybody that has order, okay? Because his MO is lies, confusion, chaos, okay? Anytime division and striving can enter into an organization of any kind, he's pretty happy, all right? And can really operate unfettered. If we really know how this thing works, I think it's why we have Bible verses like, wherever two of you agree as touching a thing, whenever two or more are gathered, I am right there in their midst. All of those Bible verses deal with this issue of unity. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and chapter 3 both deal with the issue of unity. Let there be no divisions among you. Some of you say that you're of Cephas, some of you say you're of Paul, whatever the case may be. Well, guess what? Neither of us, not Paul, not Cephas, not anybody, is the head of the church. Jesus is the head of the church, they said. So don't forget, no division and striving. That's the point. When you start to experience that, when you start it, and you start to get that confusion going on, who's in charge, who's making decisions, or you see somebody that is trying to make decisions and shouldn't be making the decisions, it's time to break that party up. It's time to back away and then regroup and come at it again.
And, and I thank you, because that gave me that clarity when you said that stuff. It stuck to heart, because I was able to look around that night and see it. And I calculated in my head everything that you just said. And we stopped it right then and there. We said, no, something's not good here. Something's definitely up. So,
and I think that in any group, Matt, you with your team and so forth, you probably had these kinds of experiences. I love the statement that you're making there. I love that. I hope you don't mind if we put that up. Is that okay if we go ahead and put that up? Because this is the 1010 at 1010. This is really, really important. Check your equipment and check your investigators. You must watch each other for changes when something happens. Back out slowly and calmly. This is called order. This is order. And you know what? You don't have to, when you approach things of order, you end up with a better result. And listen, this is my admonition to every group out there. If you have stopped working for the betterment of your client and now you're into your thing, you've missed it. You're not going to help anybody. When your focus is on that client and how you can help them to have a better life when you walk away from that situation, now you're in the right vein. But if it's all about, well, I'm sorry, guys. I mean, Scott, I know he's the president and, we had a little election and we voted him the president, but I know more than he does. No, I'm sorry. It doesn't matter how much you know. Once you get out of order, then you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
Very true.
Yep.
Very true. And this is true too. But yeah, and you're 100% right, Dale. But I do like to add in to Matt's statement there that you also have to have a sense of accountability too. If you're tired, if you're not feeling well, if things are not physically, emotionally, mentally right with you, maybe it's time to kind of take yourself out of the situation for a bit. So that way you don't put yourself and your team in risk.
See, that's what I'm talking about right there, Scott. That's leadership. Okay, leadership says the kinds of things you said. Now, I'm not saying this to give you a swollen head, because whoever the next leader is, when you die or whatever, somebody has to. No, I'm just messing. But that's good leadership. Leadership leads. It doesn't push. Leadership gets out in front and does those things. So there's an example. Leadership leads. Okay. I mean, I spent 11 years traveling the globe teaching leadership. That's what I was there to do. And then the rest of these things all happened as I was there to do the other things. And then these other things took place. I'm just telling you, leadership leads. And you do that by example, humility. You know, you don't have all the answers. You get the input from everybody you can, and then you make a decision. And guess what? Followers, to be effective as a part of the team, know how to follow. So they know how to say, you know, can you imagine? We'd have lost every single solitary combat situation that we were in as a country if we didn't have order. If we didn't have order. I mean, the generals are the generals, and they make the calls, and and so on. Right down, it's called the chain of command. And if you don't have a proper, and guess what? The spiritual realm understands the chain of command. They understand it. So these spirits that are out there doing their thing, whatever the case may be, they understand the chain of command. If the teams can't understand the chain of command, guess what? Guess who wins that battle? Okay, it's not going to be the team. It's not going to be us. We're not going to win that battle. So I'm not saying this ad nauseum. I don't mean to. I'm not saying this in a cruel way. Good leaders lead. They don't dictate. Good leaders don't lord it over people. Good leaders lead people. And that's extremely important, it seems to me. So,
well, I appreciate the trust you guys put into me. I mean, obviously I couldn't do half as good as we do if it wasn't for everybody that's willing to follow, like you said, and put their faith that I'm not going to put them in harm's way. Well,
and God is just wonderful at putting these kinds of things together. In my opinion, again, I talk about God more than anything. That's who I am. I'm not going to be.
I wouldn't change you for the world.
But I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, I remember when I first met Matt. I thought that was the first thing that came to my mind, and the stuff that he was sharing about. The first thing that came to my mind was the fact that there's a good leader. God has a way of putting good leaders in those positions to be able to help. And he's done that all across. But the troubled one, think about it right now. Okay, you've watched the television shows. I'm not going to name them. You know them, all right? Mm-hmm. The ones that continue on doing the right things, the ones that continue are the ones that didn't, they're not on the air all that long because they don't submit to the idea that the ratings are what counts and making money, commercial money is what counts. We're going to be true to our call. We're going to do the right thing. You may not like it, so we won't be around long. You want to film us doing it, you're going to get the real deal. I would much rather have that. But when all of a sudden you have people that are creating experiences in order to get viewership, I'm sorry, you after a while, and here's the thing, be warned, because if you do those kinds of things, that is an opening for the enemy to get in there and bring not just confusion and destruction among the group, but also the people that the group pledges to serve. Those individuals, those households, those groups, those entities that call us to go and investigate or whatever. I'm just telling you, go ahead and play the game, a little bit of fakery, right? And when that happens, you've opened yourself up for the worst possible situation. No room for it.
Yeah. I mean, what more can I say than what you do? I mean, you have an elegant way of speaking the truth there, my friend.
I'm just tired.
Nothing wrong. That helps you cut through the BS and the fanciness and let you say exactly the way it should be said. I don't think I've ever accused you of being a mind reader, but
I'm definitely not
that. Excuse me.
No, I'm just glad to serve, and I hope that what we're able to do is always promote the idea of serving people. That's really
well. Now that we've done a few of these now, and I'm really feeling comfortable with the fact that these are happening, these podcasts, I feel that we're reaching a broader audience and actually an extension of what we do, because I'm sure everybody that's here tonight has learned at least one thing from you, if not many things. And so
there's so much. There's so much more.
And I'm hoping that you'll come back sooner or later.
Yeah, it'd be my
Yes,
privilege
it-
to do that. I just want you to know that if I'm going to teach something that's going to, if I ever did a podcast and did an actual teaching on this, it would be 1 hour long. Because human beings, we adults, we get scattered after a little over an hour and we can't remember the things that are happening. But I like this conversational format. I think that really helps so much. And hopefully then we can also build some other people coming in and chiming in and asking questions or offering answers. I don't have all the answers. So there are plenty of people out there that can help us out a little bit with it. But I do recommend that, I'd recommend that. There are a lot of other things that at a later time we can actually put out, maybe a book list or something that people can actually go to. Again, we're in a great age right now. If you don't have time to read a book, then listen to it.
That's why I do a lot of audiobooks, a lot of stuff that Missy offers for me to listen to or watch, like the what's that, Lights Out podcast.
Oh yeah, Lights Out and what Mile High podcast, is that what the other one is? What's the other? Mile Higher and Lights Out are the two podcasts. Yeah.
I don't exactly sit and watch them, but I definitely let them play and like their audiobooks and such wonderful.
Scott, it'd be good to mention that those folks are on Apple Podcasts. So you can find that. This book here, I don't know if I mentioned this book before, but The Demonologist.
I don't think I've seen that before.
No, but I love owning a book. I love it. It's great. I like the smell of books, everything else. But I listened to this book. I didn't read it. I listened to it. And
honestly,
kind of neat because they have like sound effects in it and stuff. So it keeps it interesting. It's very, very good. Very good. Yeah.
I am bad with pronunciations of names when I'm reading them. Anything above the word Bob, I can't read it. So
the way you do that is every time you come to a name, it's just Bob.
Everybody's Bob.
Change them all. Everybody's Bob. Yeah, that'll help you.
3-letter word, Bob. Starts with a B, ends with a B. Come on, Bob. You can guess it. So it's nice to hear the audio versions because what I think is in my mind, other people could either answer it and say, yes, I'm right, or not so right.
Some people have book reading clubs, but Mikey and I are going to have a book smelling club.
Book smelling. Yep, I know Mikey. Yeah. She suffered some northern winters up here too. But yeah, it took me a while to get used to listening to audiobooks as opposed to holding it in my hand and such. But yeah, BMA. What's BMA? I'm not sure what that is. But
is it book?
Yes,
It's not Boy Scouts of America. It's the Book Scholars of America. Okay.
Oh boy. So
we started a new organization tonight. How's that?
Why not? We've done stranger things like Lucky Charms in our beer.
Oh.
But no, I mean 2.5 hours and it still feels like we could have another 5-hour discussion. So yeah.
I'm going to bed. You can talk about this.
But I mean, I feel that if you will come back on, you will definitely have an invite. Maybe Missy will grace us with a presence one of these days.
Yeah, she does some podcasts herself for businesses, and she's really good at it. She does a great job, on it.
She does.
She does.
I enjoy sitting back and watching you play Vanna to her.
Every once in a while, she allows me to come on her show. Every once in a while, not Vanna, Melissa. Yeah.
You don't turn the letters like.
No, but I could do that. Yeah. This is a great. It's a great format, a great opportunity, and the other thing is, anytime that you are on one of these podcasts, share it, get more people on there watching it, and there'll be a lot more interaction and questions, and so absolutely good to be on tonight.
And you never know who will join after you share that might want to join in and be part of these um, podcasts and such, different paranormal groups. I know we have Angel coming up, which will be a totally different scenario in conversation wise. She'll be able to answer a few things about the pre-WASP days because technically she has a lot more experience in the paranormal than I do.
Yeah.
So who knows where that conversation will lead. We also have two people from WAPS, Wisconsin area paranormal society that's supposed to be coming on. Alan and his co-founder, total different section of the United States. I mean, who knows where that will lead? And so by sharing this stuff and comments and such, you just never know who the next guest might be.
Well, it's a privilege and honor, and I'm humbled that you asked me to be on. No, seriously, Scott.
No, you definitely do me the benefit in the being here.
And I'm going to get some sleep. So.
Yeah, I'm not far behind. I'm usually my work days and such. I'm in bed about 3 hours ago. I'm an old man, you know. That's why I get a little cranky at this time of night.
So before you get wound up and you're cranky, we should probably say good night.
Good night, Dale. And I really appreciate you. Thank you, everybody who joined. Is there anything that you wish to let people know before you take off? I shared your email earlier.
You can put that back up if you'd like to. If you have any questions, if anybody has any questions or any of the other groups represented or whatever the case might be, if there's any way that I can help, I may not be able to come directly to you depending on distance, but I certainly am more than happy to have conversations, communicate, and try to be of as much help as possible, for sure. And that's the email address right there, dale.haight@yahoo.com. And we're hoping in the near future to be able to be a little more active and really start putting this stuff out there. So thanks for joining. And at Mikey's suggestion, we're going to get some sleep now.
Or at least watch The Right.
Or that. That's good. Great movie.
Good movie to fall asleep to.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Oh, Dale, I will speak to you soon, my friend. And everybody heard him commit to another night here, so make sure you hold him to it. If he doesn't show up anytime soon, you know how to contact him.
Oh, thanks.
Right. You did it yourself. All right, bud. You have a good night.
Talk to you later.
And talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. I really want to thank Dale for being here tonight. I mean, he made my job really easy by sitting back and just letting him have his show. Take what he said to heart. He means it when he says get a hold of him. He might not be able to show up to your front door, but he'll definitely answer your email as soon as you send it, within reason. Don't email him tonight because he probably won't answer you till tomorrow morning. But there's so much to digest. I recommend that you go back through when you can and kind of listen to parts, especially where you see questions pop up on the screen, and just re-listen to what was commented on and such. We will definitely have Dale back. We have one of our co-founders of WASP coming on next Saturday, hopefully at 7:30. Angel, she is a wonderful person that I imagine is going to bring a lot to our conversation. The amazing thing I want to do with these podcasts is to have such a variety that the shows will be the same but different. You know what I mean? So make sure you tune in, and then we'll probably start spacing them out a little bit instead of every Saturday night. Try to do it every other Saturday, so that way we don't get burnt out, you guys don't get burnt out on such, and it gives a little more time to prepare for guests and get more questions for it. Mikey, you're welcome. I'm glad you were able to join. I'm glad everybody was able to join. You guys are so awesome. First time doing this for Twitter. I don't know how that turned out and such. If you can, if you're still here, give a like up before you head out. That would be awesome. I'm sure you, I mean, I see you guys have been doing it all night. I really appreciate that. So make sure to subscribe, hit the notifications so that way if I'm running a little late, it'll pop up that when I do go live or when things come up. Check the Facebook page. We definitely keep everything updated on that. Twitter, Twitch, we have all that. So with that, thank you very much. And I hope everybody has a great night and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you guys. Bye.